Good afternoon, students. Thank you, as always, for putting up with the discomfort on a very special day for us. So today is, on the one hand, Yom Ha'atzmaut, Israeli Independence Day, and on the other hand, let's just put in a plug for the fact that it's also St. George's Day. So a great day to have these two flags behind me. I know one of them is the UK flag, not the English flag, but go with it. A special day for England, a special day for Israel, and who better for us to have to address us than the most important Israeli in England, that is to say the Israeli ambassador, formerly the Israeli ambassador to the Court of St. James's, but to all intents and purposes the Israeli ambassador to the United Kingdom. I'm very pleased, very honoured to introduce to you His Excellency Taub, who's going to address us this afternoon. Thank you very much.
I'd forgotten it was St. George's Day, so happy St. George's Day to you. And of course, because it's Yom Ha'atzmaut, Chag Sameach. You know, on Chag Sameach, the place that I would really like to be, can you hear? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Obviously, the place that I would most like to be is in Israel. But if I can't be in Israel, the next best place to be is with a group of young people here who care about Israel, who are celebrating Yom Ha'atzmaut. I understand there's been a lot of Israelis singing and all sorts of things going on this morning, so it's really wonderful to be here. So I was wondering what I could tell you about Israel, how I could try and make Israel, you know, in a sense more real to you. And what I thought I would do is bring a bunch of bits and pieces that to me have a certain meaning in relation to Israel, and share them with you, tell you why they're rather special to me. So I've got a few of them and see what you think of them. So, the first thing I've brought is this. Does anyone know what this is?
Chris.
Bamba. You've eaten bamba? Bamba is a slightly funny, peanut-flavoured, fluffy snack. And it's very, very popular. Every Israeli baby grows up in it. By the way, if you ever see somebody opening a packet of bamba, you can tell whether they've been in the army or not. How do you know? If they open it from the top, like a packet of crisps, then that means that they probably haven't been in the Israeli army. But if they open it from the back, like this, from the side, and they open it up so that everybody can take some, then that's a sign they've been in the army, because that's how everybody shares them. But the reason I bought it was because of something else. There's actually something that's called the Bamba effect. What's the Bamba effect? It's something that actually has been written about in science journals. And it's very strange, but it turns out that in Israel, kids have 10 times less allergies to peanuts than they have in other countries of the world. And they've done research to try and find out why that is. And the answer is because they're fed bamba at a very young age. So they learn how to live with peanuts, even when they're babies. And I think it's very interesting because the bumper effect, if you like, is almost like a metaphor, like a symbol of Israeli society. Because in Israeli society, kids are challenged in all sorts of ways, even when they're very young. They're given a lot of responsibility. You know, teenagers volunteer for Magen David Adom. It's like the Israeli Red Cross. They go out on ambulances to try looking after people who get hurt and so on and so forth. And on the one hand, it's tough for the kids, but in other way, like bamba, it develops a certain amount of resistance. It actually makes them a little bit stronger in later life. So that was the first thing I wanted to show you. What else have we got?
More crisps.
Okay, let's have a look at this. I don't know if you can see this, especially not at the back, but here is something. It looks like a sort of big tic-tac. It's actually called a pill cam. And a pill cam is a medical invention from Israel. And what it is a pill that includes a tiny, tiny little camera. And what's it used for? The fact is, if somebody has an illness inside their body, often the doctors want to open them up to be able to see what's going on in there. And obviously it's a big operation, it's quite dangerous. But with the pill camera, they don't need to do that. Because what they do is they give this pill to the patient, they swallow it, it goes through their body, and as it's going through their body, It takes 2 pictures a second, it sends them to a computer, and the doctors can know what's going on inside them without even looking inside, without having to open them up. So it's an amazing invention. And one of the things that I think is incredible about it, it was actually invented by somebody who wasn't even a doctor at all. He had been working in the Israeli army designing missiles, guided missiles. And he asked himself, how can I use this technology, this science that guides missiles, to do something that will help the world? And he used that same technology to do the guiding system for this pill can that goes through your body. So I think that's quite a neat thing. What else? Yeah, I bought a little dictionary, and the reason I bought a dictionary is a Hebrew-English dictionary. I bought it just as a reminder that one of the incredible things in Israel is the Hebrew language. I don't think there is another country in the world that is speaking a language that was dead for 2,000 years and then came back to life. Literally nobody was speaking it, and then 2,000 years later there was a man called Eliezer ben Yehuda who decided we need, in this new Jewish state we're building, we need to start speaking Hebrew. And he started in his family insisting that in his house they would speak Hebrew. And here and there they had to make up new words for things like televisions and telephones and so on. But most of the words are words that you would find in the Bible, and it's incredible. If Moses was alive today, he could walk down the street in Tel Aviv or Netanya and go into a shop and order a falafel. I mean, literally would be able to use the same language. And some of the words that we use are very old. I'll give you an example. There is a word in the Talmud that is used to describe a situation when 2 of the rabbis have a disagreement, and at the end of the day we don't know which one of them is right. They ended up in a draw, we don't know which is right. Today, where would you hear that Hebrew word used? You'll hear it used in football games. When there's a draw, they'll call a draw a teku. A teku is exactly the word that comes from the Talmud. When 2 rabbis, we don't know which one is right. So to me, it's quite incredible that we have this language which is coming back to life in an extraordinary way. What else? Okay, well, let me show you this box. This is actually quite cool. How many of you have played the game Rummy Cup? Oh my goodness. Well, it's a great game. For those of you who haven't played it, it's sort of like a cross between sort of dominoes and Scrabble with a few numbers thrown in and whatever. It was invented in Israel by a Romanian immigrant to Israel. He invented it, he started selling it door to door, and incredibly it became Israel's most successful game export. It's sold all across the world. And one of the reasons, I love the game Rummy Cup. It's a great game to play on Shabbat. What's great about it is that a 5-year-old stands a great chance of beating a 65-year-old and so on. But when it's sold all around the world, sometimes there's countries where we're having something sold because it came from Israel. It's not always a big selling point. So they like to write "Made in Israel" in tiny, tiny letters. But the story that I loved, that I heard from the people that invented the game, was when they sold this game in China and Japan, they got a special request. Can we have it in special boxes where it has "Made in Israel" written in really big letters? Because then all the people will realize it's a clever game, because they think these Israelis are so clever. So I thought that was a lovely thing to hear from. Let's just hear 1 or 2 more. Okay, this. Does anybody know what this is? Yeah. It looks like tobacco. It looks like a pipe or something. Actually not. Any other guesses? What?
Is it a mini shofar?
A mini shofar. It looks like a mini shofar, but it's actually not. It is any others? It's actually, yeah. I think you're very close. Once again, you put it in your mouth and nearly. I'll tell you what it is. It's something that emergency doctors and medics use. If somebody's in an accident and you want to make sure that they can breathe, that somebody is not, blocked up there, you put this in you put it in your mouth, and or put it in their mouth, and it keeps them breathing. It's called an airway in English. In Hebrew, it's called airway. So you've learned a new word in Hebrew. And you know, basically every soldier has one in their pack. Every kid that volunteers for Magen David Adom has one of these. And it reminds me actually of my time in the army. One of the things that I did in the army was I was a combat medic. I was a medic for soldiers. And I'll tell you something, you know, when you become a medic in the army, you have to make a promise, you have to take an oath that you will treat everybody who is injured on the field of battle equally. You know, that doesn't matter which side of the battle they're on, whether they're on your side, whether on the enemy side. Once they're injured, you have to treat them the same. And I remember even when I made that promise, when I was taking that oath, thinking how difficult it would be to implement that in practice. But literally it was just a week later that I was in an emergency hospital, emergency room, and a Palestinian terrorist was brought in, who had actually blown himself up while he was preparing a bomb. And one of the things that was extraordinarily moving to me was that he actually got exactly the same medical treatment that an Israeli who was injured would have got as well. So to me it was a remarkable example of living up to that very, very high standard. Okay, maybe just two more. Here's one. Here's an Israeli coin. Why have I brought an Israeli coin? Just because it reminds me of a story to do with one of my kids. When he was a kid and he was trying out for the army, he wanted to get in a very, very tough unit. And he's a skinny young fellow, and he was worried that he didn't weigh enough to get into the army. So afterwards he told me that what he did on that day was when he went to the tryouts, he filled all his pockets with lots of these coins so that he would weigh enough to get into that unit, and he actually did. And again, I was very moved by it because I was thinking of my grandparents when they were growing up in Russia. And then Russia had a very, very difficult time with the Jews who used to try and recruit them into the Red Army, the Russian army. And so my grandfather, like a lot of other people at the time, did everything that they possibly could to try and get out of going in the army. And this, that my son is trying as hard as he can to do everything he could to get into a good unit in the army, in a sense it was showing me what it means to feel responsible for your own country. And one more thing perhaps I'll show you, and with this maybe we'll finish. I bought one of these blue and white collecting boxes for Israel. I don't know if you still see them. When I was a kid, a lot of people would go around collecting for Israel. Then the money was used for planting trees in Israel. Today it's used for doing water irrigation and all sorts of other projects to grow things in the desert and so on. But the reason I bought it because last year I went to Poland on the March of the Living. And when I was there, I learned something that I didn't know before. And that was in the Warsaw Ghetto. I don't know if you know the story of the Warsaw Ghetto. The Warsaw Ghetto is a place that all the Jews were herded into by the Nazis. Eventually they were killed. It was a terrible, terrible part of the Second World War, of the Holocaust. But what I learned was, in the rubble, underneath all the stones in the Warsaw Ghetto, they found one of these blue and white collecting boxes. And I found that very moving because the Jews, when they were told to go into the ghetto, they were told to take with them only their most essential belongings, only the things that they really needed. And that meant that for one of those Jews, this box, this dream of building a home for Jewish people in Israel was an essential belonging, was one of his most valuable things. And here we are just a few decades later. Any one of us can get on an aeroplane and in 5 hours we can be in a country that he could only dream of. And to me that's something that's quite incredible. In a way we are living in the dream of our grandparents and our great-grandparents. And I feel that we and you are extraordinarily, extraordinarily lucky. And I think it's wonderful that you're studying in a school that Israel is so important. It's It's wonderful to see blue and white all over. It's wonderful to come to a school where written in Hebrew, Bruchim Habaim, welcome, is written in big letters outside. So I hope all of you will think about your relationship with Israel. Think about if you had to come up with an object yourself that was a sign of your connection with Israel, what might that be? And I hope you will have a Chag Sameach. Thank you very much.